American life has known its fair share of adversity and uncertainty. I want to nominate a man who ran for president to change the course of an already weak economy, and then just 6 weeks before his election, saw it suffer the biggest collapse since the Great Depression. A man who stopped the slide into depression and put us on the long road to recovery, knowing all the while that no matter how many jobs that he saved or created, there'd still be millions more waiting, worried about feeding their own kids, trying to keep their hopes alive. I want to nominate a man who's cool on the outside. But who burns for America on the inside. That we can build a new American dream economy, driven by innovation, creativity, by education, and yes, by cooperation. And by the way, after last night, I want a man who had the good sense to marry Michelle Obama. President of the United States. Nominate him to be the standard bearer of the Democratic Party.
I second that nomination.
In Tampa a few days ago, we heard a lot of talk about how the President and the Democrats don't really believe in free enterprise and individual initiative. How we want everybody to be dependent on the government. How bad we are for the economy. This Republican narrative, its alternative universe, says that every one of us in this room who amounts to anything, we're all completely self-made. One of the greatest chairmen the Democratic Party ever had, Bob Strauss, used to say that every politician wants every voter to believe he was born in a log cabin he built himself. But, as Strauss then admitted, it ain't so. We Democrats, we think the country works better with a strong middle class, with real opportunities for poor folks to work their way into it, with a relentless focus on the future, with business and government actually working together to promote growth and broadly shared prosperity. You see, we believe that we're all in this together is a far better philosophy than your own. He's right. Since 1961, for 2 years now, the Republicans have held the White House 28 years, the Democrats 24. In those 52 years, our private economy has produced 66 million private sector jobs. So, what's the job score? Republicans, 24 million, Democrats, 42. It turns out that advancing equal opportunity and economic empowerment is both morally right and good economics. Why? Because poverty, discrimination, and ignorance restrict growth. When you stifle attention. When you don't invest in new ideas, it doesn't just cut off the people who are affected, it hurts us all.
That's right.
We know that investments in education and infrastructure and scientific and technological research increase growth. They increase good jobs and they create new wealth for all the rest of us. There's something I've noticed lately, you probably have too, and it's this. Maybe just because I grew up at a different time, but though I often disagree with Republicans, I actually never learned to hate them the way the far right that now controls their party seems to hate our president. That would be impossible for me because President Eisenhower sent federal troops to my home state to integrate Norfolk Central High School. When I was a governor, I worked with President Reagan in his White House on the first round of welfare reform and with President George H.W. Bush on national education goals. I'm actually very grateful. If you saw from the film what I do today, I have to be grateful, and you should be too.
All right.
President George W. Bush supported PEPFAR. It saved the lives of millions of people in 4 countries. And I have been honored to work with both Presidents Bush on natural disasters in the aftermath of the South Asian tsunami, Hurricane Katrina, the horrible earthquake in Haiti. Through my foundation, both in America and around the world, I'm working all the time with Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. Sometimes I couldn't tell you for the life who I'm working with because we focus on solving problems and seizing opportunities and not fighting opportunities. And here's what I want the people at home to think about. When times are tough and people are frustrated and angry and hurting and uncertain, the politics of constant conflict may be good. But what is good politics does not necessarily work in the real world.
Right,
what works in the real world is cooperation. Business and government, foundations and universities. Ask the mayors who are here. Los Angeles is getting green and Chicago is getting an infrastructure bank because Republicans and Democrats are working together. They didn't check their region. You know what? They didn't stop disagreeing, but their purpose was to get something done. Now, why is this true? Why does cooperation work better than constant conflict? Because nobody's right all the time, and a broken clock is right twice a day. Every one of us and every one of them, we're compelled to spend our fleeting lives between those two extremes. Knowing we're never going to be right all the time and hoping we're right more than twice a day. Unfortunately, the faction that now dominates the Republican Party doesn't see it that way. They think government is always the enemy, they're always right, and compromise is weakness. Just in the last couple of elections, they defeated 2 distinguished Republican senators because they dared to cooperate with Democrats on net issues important to the future of the country, even national security. Republican congressman with almost 100% voting record on every conservative score because he said he realized he did not have to hate the president to disagree with him. Boy, that was a non-starter and they threw him out. One of the main reasons we ought to re-elect President Obama is that he is still committed to constructive cooperation. Secretaries of Defense, the Army, and Transportation. He appointed a vice president who ran against him in 2008. And he trusted that vice president to oversee the successful end of the war in Iraq and the implementation of the recovery act. Appointed several members of his cabinet, even though they supported Hillary in the primary. Heck, he even appointed Hillary. She and the National Security team have done for me. To make us safer and stronger, to build a world with more partners and fewer enemies. I'm grateful for the relationship of respect and partnership she and the President have enjoyed, and the signal that sends to the rest of the world that democracy does not have to be a blood sport. It can be an honorable enterprise. To the men and women who served our country in uniform. I am especially grateful to Michelle Obama and to Joe Biden for supporting those military families while they're working overseas. President Obama's whole record on national security is a tribute to his strength, to his judgment, and to his preference for inclusion and partnership over partisanship. We need We all know that he also tried to work with congressional Republicans on health care, debt reduction, and new jobs. And that didn't work out so well. But it could have been because, as the Senate Republican leader said, in a remarkable moment of candor, 2 full years before the election, their number one priority was not to put America back to work. It was to put the president out of work. To break it to you, but we're going to keep President Obama on. In Tampa, the Republican argument against the president re-election was actually pretty simple, pretty snappy. It went something like this. We left him a total mess. He hadn't cleaned it up fast enough, so fire him and put us back in. They looked good, they sounded good. They convinced me that they all love their families and their children, and We're grateful they've been born in America. And really, I'm not being... And this is important. They convinced me they were honorable people who believe what they've said, and they're going to keep every commitment they've made. We just got to make sure the American people know what those commitments are. In order to look like an acceptable, reasonable, moderate alternative to President Obama, they just didn't say very much about the ideas they've offered over the last 2 years. They couldn't. Because they want to go back to the same old policies that got us in trouble in the first place. They want to cut taxes for high-income Americans even more than President Bush did. They want to get rid of those pesky financial regulations designed to prevent another crash and prohibit future bailouts. They want to actually increase defense spending over a decade $2 trillion more than the Pentagon has requested, without saying what they'll spend it on. And they want to make enormous cuts in the rest of the budget, especially programs that help the middle class and poor children. No. As another president once said, there they go again. A lot better. Here it is. He inherited a deeply damaged economy. He put a floor under the crash. He began the long, hard road to recovery and laid the foundation for a modern, more well-balanced economy that will produce millions of good new jobs, vibrant new businesses, and lots of new wealth for innovators. Now, are we where we want to be today? No. Is the president satisfied? No. Of course not. But are we better off than we were when he took office? Shrunk 9 full % of GDP. We were losing 750,000 jobs a month. Are we doing better than that today? Yeah. Now look, here's the challenge he faces and the challenge all of you who support him face. I get it. I know it. I've been there. Yes. A lot of Americans are still angry and frustrated about this economy. If you look at the numbers, you know employment is growing, banks are beginning to lend again. In a lot of places, housing prices are even beginning to pick up. But too many people do not feel it yet. That's right. That's right. I had the same thing happen. That's right. In 1994 and early 95. Yes, it did. We could see that the policies were working, that the economy was growing. But most people didn't feel it yet. Thankfully, by 1996, the economy was roaring, everybody felt it, and we were halfway through the longest peacetime expansion in the history of the United States. The difference this time is purely in the circumstances. President Obama started with a much weaker economy than I did. Listen to me now. No president, not me, not any of my predecessors, no one could have fully repaired all the damage that he found in just 1 year. For a new, modern, successful economy of shared prosperity. And if you will renew the president's contract, you will feel it. Whether the American people believe what I just said or not may be the whole election. I just want you to know that I believe it.
Yes.
With all my heart, I believe it. I believe it because President Obama's approach embodies the values, the ideas, and the direction America has to take to build the 21st century version of the American dream. A nation of shared opportunities, shared responsibilities, shared prosperity, a shared sense of community. So let's get back to the story. In 2010, as the President's recovery program kicked in, the job losses stopped, and things began to turn around. The Recovery Act saved and created millions of jobs and cut taxes, I say this again, cut taxes for 95% of the American people. In the last 29 months, our economy has produced about 4.5 million private sector jobs. Could have done better, but last year the Republicans blocked the President's job plan, costing the economy more than 1 million new jobs. So here's another job score. President Obama plus 4.5 million. Congressional Republicans, 0. Manufacturing jobs have been created under President Obama. That's the first time manufacturing jobs have increased since the 1990s. Yes. I'll tell you something else. The auto industry restructuring worked. It saved more than 1 million jobs, and not just the GM, Chrysler, and their dealerships, but in auto parts manufacturing all over the country. That's why even the automakers who weren't part of the deal supported it. They needed to save those parts suppliers too. Like I said, we're all in this together. So what's happened? There are now 250,000 more people working in the auto industry than on the day the companies were restructured. Save GM and Chrysler. So, here's another job score. Are you listening in Michigan and Ohio? Here's another job score. Obama, 250,000. Romney, 0. The agreement the administration made with the management, labor, and environmental groups to double car mileage, that was a good deal too. It will cut your gas prices in half, your gas bill. No matter what the price is, if you double the mileage of your car, your bill will be half what it would have been. It will make us more energy independent. It will cut greenhouse gas emissions. And according to several analyses over the next 20 years, it will bring us another 500,000 good new jobs in the American. The President's energy strategy, which he calls all of the above, is helping too. The boom in oil and gas production, combined with greater energy efficiency, has driven oil imports to a near 20-year low and natural gas production to an all-time high. And renewable energy production has doubled. More new jobs, but there are already more than 3 million jobs open and unfilled in America. Mostly because the people who apply for them don't yet have the required skills to do them. So even as we get Americans more jobs, we have to prepare more Americans for the new jobs that are actually going to be created. The old economy is not coming back. We've got to build a new one and educate people to do those jobs. colleges and employers and working together to train people for jobs that are actually open in their communities. And even more important, after a decade in which exploding college costs have increased the dropout rate so much that the percentage of our young people with four-year college degrees has gone down so much that we have dropped to 16th in the world.
That's crazy. That is
in the percentage of young people with college degrees. So, the president's student loan reform is more important than ever. Here's what it does. You need to tell every voter where you live about it. It lowers the cost of federal student loans, and even more important, it gives students the right to repay those loans as a clear, fixed, low percentage of their income. They can't repay their debt. It means that if someone wants to take a job with a modest income, a teacher, a police officer, if they want to be a small town doctor in a little rural area, they won't have to turn those jobs down because they don't pay enough to repay the debt. Their debt obligation will be determined by their salary. This will change the future for young Americans. All these issues, I know we're better off because President Obama made the decisions he did.
Yes, he did.
Now, that brings me to health care. And the Republicans call it derisively Obamacare. They say it's a government takeover, a disaster, and that if we'll just elect them, they'll repeal it. Well, are they right? No. Let's take a look at what's actually happened so far. First, individuals and businesses have already gotten more than $1 billion in refunds from insurance companies because a legal law requires 80 to 85% of your premium to go to your health care, not profits or promotion. Today's an even better fact because a bunch of insurance companies have applied to lower their rates to comply with the requirement. Second, more than 3 million young people between 19 and 25 are insured for the first time under millions of seniors are receiving preventive care, all the way from breast cancer screenings to tests for heart problems and scores of other things, and younger people are getting them too. Fourth, soon the insurance companies, not the government, the insurance companies will have millions of new customers, many of them middle-class people with pre-existing conditions who never could get insurance before. For the last 2 years, after going up at 3 times the rate of inflation for a decade, for the last 2 years, healthcare costs have been under 4% in both years for the first time in 50 years. Are we better off because President Obama fought for healthcare reform? Deserve an answer. First, both Governor Romney and Congressman Ryan attacked the president for allegedly robbing Medicare. Those $716 million. That's the same attack they leveled against Congress in 2010.
That's right.
And they got a lot of votes on it. But it's not true. Look, here's what really happened. You be the judge. Here's what really happened. There were no cuts to benefits at all. None.
Right.
What the president did was to save money by taking the recommendations of a commission of professionals to cut unwarranted subsidies to providers and insurance companies that were not making people healthier and were not necessary to get the providers to provide the service. And instead of raiding Medicare, he used the savings to close the donut hole in the Medicare drug program. You all got to listen carefully to this. This is really important. And to add 8 years to the life of the Medicare Trust Fund so it is solvent till 2024. President Obama and the Democrats didn't weaken Medicare, they strengthened Medicare. Now, when Congressman Ryan looked into that TV camera and attacked President Obama's Medicare savings as, quote, the biggest, coldest power play, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Because that $716 billion is exactly to the dollar the same amount of Medicare savings that he had in his own budget. You got to get one thing, it takes some brass to attack a guy for doing what you did.